Welcome back to Great Day. From the birth of Juneteenth to the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history, Galveston has played a major role in Texas and American history. But beyond the stories we already know are countless others waiting to be discovered. Joining us to share some of the island's most surprising revelations are the authors of Secret Galveston, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure, Ruiz, Hopkins, and Heidi Lutz. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Obviously a popular destination for visitors and even locals. I say Houston as locals, right, to go, because I always feel like I got way out of town without having to go far.
It's a gem. I mean, it's right down the road from Houston. People love Galveston. People have been vacationing in Galveston for a long
Over 100
time.
years.
A long time, yeah. And it's about more than just the beaches. You know, the home to Moody Gardens, which we love, and it has so many amazing things. You know, with the pyramids and then all the different animals, the rainforest, and you can visit the 7 seas there. All of that type of stuff, as well as the Bryan Museum, which has some amazing, wonderful collections.
Yes, I mean, we really, from history to the modern attractions like Moody Gardens that you mentioned, there's just so much. And then with this book, we decided to focus on those things those hidden gems, the stories behind the history, the stories behind these things you pass by all the time.
The stories that kind of make Galveston the island she is.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people don't know the island that she is, but also the island that was supposed to be is once considered for the capital of Texas.
Yes, yes. I mean, Galveston, for those that don't know the history, I mean, we were the city. We were bigger than Houston. You know, during the Gilded Age, every president but one visited Galveston.
We were the playground of the South.
Yes,
yeah.
The Wall Street of the Southwest.
Yes.
And one of the richest cities in the entire country, as evidenced by a lot of the mansions that we still see there.
Yes, we had more millionaires per capita before the 1900 storm than any other city.
Well, not just the mansions. You think of cities in Texas. There's Moody, Texas. There's Sealy, Texas. They all came from Galveston.
Ah, okay. Lots of historical milestones. 1863, the Battle of Galveston.
Yeah, so one of the things that we mention in the book is, and many people have seen it, on 25th and Broadway, you see the Texas Heroes Monument. And Lady Victory is pointing to the Battle of San Jacinto. And so, I mean, the whole idea is that was a monument to show the importance of Galveston. It's 72 feet tall, but the thing was, when it was dedicated, which was shortly before the 1900 storm, Lady Victory was the second tallest statue in the country.
Oh, wow.
Second to William Penn in Philadelphia. Okay. So, I mean, these are the things that you just don't realize that you see all the time, and it just reminds you of the significance of Galveston.
Yeah, the birth of Juneteenth, which is, you know, after the last couple of years, it became a federal holiday.
Yes, and that's what, growing up in this area, you grew up knowing about Juneteenth, and the people in Galveston who grew up in Galveston knew the history of it. And when I went to the island 30 years ago, I grew up in the Houston area, but the Reedy Chapel, this is where the birthplace of Juneteenth. They will claim it because Reedy Chapel hosted the first Juneteenth celebration that December. So they made the proclamation, the General Order number 3 on June 19th. And in December,
it's like, yes, President Abraham Lincoln signed it a couple of years ago. They're like, oh, okay.
Yes. And, you know, we didn't show a picture on there, but if you are in Galveston, if you're on the Strand, the Absolute Equality installation, art installation is huge. It's important, and it's just a reminder of the history. And a lot of people don't realize there's a little QR code you can scan right next to it that will tell you the story of each portal of that mural. And I love that is a year-round thing to celebrate our history.
And I love that we have something that's so far ago historical and using modern technology to go ahead and help tell that story. And then, of course, as we know, Galveston's had their fair share of disasters. There was the Great Galveston Fire, and that was in, 1885?
Yes, and so much of our Galveston's East End Historic District was destroyed and burned in that, but then that's why the East End kind of came back.
That's why we have such a concentrated collection of Victorian architecture, because all of the buildings that were destroyed, when they were rebuilt, it was rebuilt in the fashion of the time, which was Victorian style.
Yeah, and then of course a story that I remember for years I didn't know about the story, and then we went down to Galveston and did a whole deep dive into this, and dive's probably not the right word, but into this, but the Great Galveston Hurricane.
Yes,
and that right there, that's what basically changed the trajectory of Galveston.
Absolutely. And one of the stories, there's lots of stories related to the 1900 storm or the Great Storm, but one of the ones that we put in the book that Heidi and I laugh about that I never really knew about, and this is a photo of a 1900 storm, was in front of Ursuline Academy or Ursuline Convent, well, which is now Holy Family School. There's a bell. And this bell was used during the 1900 storm by the Ursuline nuns, and they rang it, and it ultimately, because of them ringing that bell and people swimming to the convent, about 1,500 people survived the 1900 storm.
The nuns pulled them into the second floor windows.
Yeah. In fact, we talked to a woman who her grandparents relayed the story to her, and she said literally people were floating by, and they were on that second floor of their homes, even some of those, and they were just literally pulling people to safety, and it was crazy. Yeah, so just as we talk about how many people died, in fact, I think they just stopped counting at one point, didn't they? We can talk about how many heroic stories, and as we know, sometimes disasters build communities, right? Create communities, and that's what happened. People became even closer, because when you look at the devastation, you're thinking, how do you possibly rebuild after that?
And I think that, and those of us who went through Hurricane Ike, that was the first thought that went through my mind. How do they come back from that? You see those pictures of that rubble, and you imagine what was buried beneath that rubble and what you could see and smell. And I think that that is what the legacy the 1900 storm leaves us, is it built the resiliency in Galveston.
Absolutely.
If we are nothing, we are not. We are a resilient people in Galveston.
All right, you are a BOI?
I'm a BOI.
Explain to people what BOI is.
That means that I was born on the island, and yes, it's a thing. And people that are born on the island really take pride in it. And it's been interesting because you have people that are born there and then they leave, but then so many of them come back. And then Heidi is...
I'm an IBC, an Islander by choice.
Yes, there you go.
I came after college and stayed. And I had gone to Galveston as a child, but man, I got the sand between my toes, as they say. That first year, my first year in Galveston working at the Daily News, I bought a house. And here I am 32 years later.
Covering the island. And you have been covering the island for quite some time.
Oh my gosh.
You were a kid writing short stories about Galveston. In fact, you recently ran across some of those stories.
Oh, it was fun. I was looking up some old, going through some old files, and I put together one of my little projects was the history of all these historic buildings in Galveston, and it's like colored with crayons and my handwritten notes of what it was, and I'm sure I presented it for some project. But no, Galveston's really a gem, and Heidi and I have been friends and collaborators for a really, really long time. And I first met you when you were doing a Palm Beach story, a Palm Beach at Community Gardens, and I was with the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
That was several years ago when my executive producer called and said, we're going to be on the beach. Would you mind wearing a bathing suit on air? And I was like, two-piece or... Which one? What do you want? Yeah, right. So that was a different body back then. But yeah, it was so much fun. But and there's so much to do. But when it comes to collecting these historical moments, are there things? I'm sure there are things that you didn't know, and that's always the great thing about history. There's so much history that just when you think you know it all, you learn something. What was something new that you learned in researching this book?
Oh gosh, there were so many. I mean, we already talked about the bell.
Yeah.
I mean, the bell was something that this is something that people see all the time that they probably don't realize when they're downtown. There's the trumpet, right?
Yeah.
Well, that trumpet is called the stone trumpet, and actually originally it was in New Orleans at the World's Fair, and it was carved by an artist named David Addix, who you also know for Sam Houston, Big Sam,
and so many of the big
and that was one of those like I said, oh, we should include the trumpet, but we need to look that up, and so I looked it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was him. It was at the World's Fair.
So, and then for me, it's like I knew that this place, Nottingham Lace, existed. I had heard about it. But what I didn't know was that when they were building this lace factory, they were building an entire company town. So Nottingham Lace was going to be this huge lace factory out on the west end, what we call the west end of the island now, pretty much where Jamaica Beach is.
And that's a photo.
And that's a photo from it. And like the only photo we could find in existence. But they had streets plotted out. They had their own post office. There was a daily train that came from the downtown area out there to take workers. That's how important
that industry and that company was to.
But then a hurricane came and swept it away.
Wow.
And
after it had already closed, it only stayed open like 2 or 3 years.
All right. In 2020, your first book was 100 Things to Do in Galveston Before You Die.
Yes.
Why did you feel the need to do a history book, and why is it so important for us to stop and take a moment and look at how we got here versus where we are?
Oh, good question. You know, when we did 100 Things to Do in Galveston Before You Die, it was more of a bucket list type book. You know, as we said, we have so many visitors, and that kind of gives you your checklist of things to do. And this book really, like you're showing pictures of the bell and the Texas Heroes Monument, these are things that you see all the time, but to know the history of this little island town and the importance of what it was in this country and is still, you know, as far as our port. I mean, there's so many things. Oh, there's Borden, Gail Borden. You know, there's so many things that make us important, and I think it's all of it. It's always important to know your history because you need to remember the importance of.
And I think what we did, the interesting aspect of it, this goes behind. So as Christine mentioned, 100 Things is the bucket list. This goes behind those items on the bucket list and tells us, again, what makes us what. And so like you showed the picture of Gail Borden. Until I moved to Galveston, I had no idea that Borden came from Galveston, and Eagle brand condensed milk created
Borden's
in Galveston.
There you go. Okay, who knew? You can meet the authors of Secret Galveston, a guide to the weird, wonderful, and obscure this weekend. On Friday, they'll be at the Galveston County Museum. And on Saturday, they will be having a book signing at Then and Now Bookshop in Galveston. If you can't make it, visit greatdayhouston.com for a link where you can buy your own copy of Secret Galveston and get it shipped for free. The book is also carried in major hotels like the Tremont House and the San Luis Resort, also at attractions like Moody Gardens and the Bryan Museum. It's a great read. Ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right, next time you come on, I'll wear my bathing suit again.